Hello everybody and welcome back to the FM Scout YouTube channel with me, Keepers. And guys, today, as you can tell by the title, we're going to be talking about how to develop youth players on Football Manager. And before we kick off into the video, I'm going to kindly ask you guys to check out my channel link, which is in the description. And if you're looking for a Football Manager 2017 Let's Play, then I'm currently doing one with Borussia Dortmund. So if you guys could check that out, that would help me a lot. If in Football Manager, in any of the Football Managers, have you ever signed a youth player with a lot of potential? And how many times have you signed a player with lots of potential that they don't reach it? And it is one of the most frustrating things ever in Football Manager. So today, I'm going to offer you a little guide which has some advice on the best ways to develop your youth players. Try and get them to that potential which you want. So we'll take a kind of small look at team training, the kind of subcategories in training, such as obviously I said team training, individual training. Then we'll move on to the kind of staff that you would need and how much of an impact the staff make, as well as your facilities, and also taking a look at maybe a side of the game which is sometimes overlooked, which is tutoring, and then obviously the big one is game time. So if you feel this video has helped by the end, then obviously leave a like, comment whatever you guys want to do, but without further ado, let's get right into the video. So going into the first category that we're going to give some advice on is team training. Now, some of you guys might not even know how to get onto the team training menu, but for those who don't know, I'll point it out here. You move over to the bar on the left, click on training, go up to the top which is next to overview and click on team. Now, team training is just one big umbrella for all the subcategories under team training. Team training as a whole is just your general training that the player receives. It's where they tend to develop most as an overall term. And as I said, there are numerous subcategories to team training, which we're going to go through right now. These include training focus, training intensity, rest days before and after matches, and scheduling of training. So moving on to the training focus, which is this little tab up here. You can click the drop down menu and there are a lot to choose from. And you can change this to whatever you guys want, but there is advice on which ones you should choose at different times of the year, such as pre-season, during the season, and then maybe post-season. So let's say during pre-season, your players have just come back from holiday and they are not fit whatsoever. You may want to click on fitness, or if you've signed a couple of new players, maybe click team cohesion, which will let the players get to understand each other a bit more and how to play with each other a lot better. You can also change the main focus with how your team plays. So let's say that you are a more defensive team and you want to kind of keep all your players back and keep incredibly compact and tight and then break. You may want to keep it on defending, or again, it's pretty self-explanatory. If you are a possession style team who like to keep the ball, pass it around, dribble in and out, then maybe ball control is what you want, or again, counter, you can maybe go on defending or even attacking. And just below it is the intensity levels of your general training. This again is pretty self-explanatory, but even still there are some advantages and disadvantages with each one. Obviously you can change it from ranges from very low to very high. If you go on very low, obviously your team won't get as much training and therefore they won't develop as quickly. Whereas if you put it on very high, they get a lot of training. That's when they tend to increase the most. But the disadvantages that come with that is that it does tire your players out a lot more, and as every Football Manager player has experienced, players become upset with the high intensity of training. I would say obviously the best is average, but depending on the type of players that you have, if they're professional or if they're determined, then they can maybe cope with a high intensity levels. But I would keep it on average and then see who is in your squad and see which one fits you the best. Moving on again in terms of team training, there is such a thing as scheduling your general training and match training. You can schedule your general training as in your main focus. Over on the left hand side you can see main focus is whatever you want on certain weeks. Obviously you don't want to keep, say if you put it on fitness in pre-season, you don't want to keep that on over the full course of the season because your players will become fit and then you'll lose out on some better training in other divisions such as obviously attacking, defending, ball control, tactical, balanced and team cohesion. But again, you can schedule it to however you want. If you want to spend maybe a month on a certain aspect of training such as attacking, you can schedule it. So we've got the month here, so we could go main focus, go attacking, main focus, attacking, and third week attacking. Then after that you can change it. But also with the match training, say you're going to play as in here Red Bull New York, we're Manchester United, we could go with attacking movement because we should be able to we're a much better team than them, they have more defensive vulnerabilities. But the more match training you have, the less general training you have, and vice versa. The more general training, the less match training. But again, the more match training you have, the more well prepared you are for each match you go into, but it might not benefit the players as much because they lose out on that general training. So there is a mix and match. If again, friendlies, match training, or the match preparation isn't maybe as focused on, because it's not the most competitive games in the world. And there is a bit of advice on the FM Scout website on this, that you should probably spend about 20 to 30% of team training on match preparation, so you can use the other rest of the time to strengthen the team in areas which you want, such as I said, attacking, defending, ball control, and the likes. Another quick one here is up at the top. You can see rest day before match and rest day after match. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory. Again, the rest days are days in which the players obviously rest and there's no training whatsoever. I would personally have the rest days after the match, because after the matches they don't typically tend to train because of their fitness levels are down, and it wouldn't be beneficial. So rest day after match to get their fitness up and they don't lose out on training. But as Football Manager goes and how the real footballing world goes, there is sometimes, in some months, there are a lot of games darted all over the place. So let's say you get 4+ games in the space of 2 weeks. You may want to put it on rest day before match as well, just because if obviously you're running your players down to the bone, that increases the chance of injuries. So if you put them both on rest day before match and rest day after match, you see it change there. That lets your players get their fitness back in between matches and last the full month of those congested fixtures. So that is general training in a nutshell. We're going to move on to individual training. Now we move on to here. It is a lot of words and a lot of text, but basically this is how you maybe define or create a player to how you want them to play. As it says on the FM Scout website, you can change a fast, technical, attacking midfielder into a patient, creative, deep-line playmaker with the correct training if you really wanted to. And like the team training, there are different subcategories to individual training, and there's only 3 of them, and this one is individual roles / specific attributes, positional training, and the preferred player moves. So on to the first subcategory, which is the individual roles and specific attributes. Now, when you're met with this, you won't get to see the training for the specific attribute. So what to do is go to this top bar, right click, go down to insert column, scroll all the way down to training schedule, and then additional focus. And then when that comes up, you can just move it next to position and role, and you can click through it, and that would let you choose which attribute to go ahead and make that their additional focus. So individual roles and the specific attributes is where you can, as I said, define a player's attributes through focusing on a certain set of attributes, which is the individual roles, or you can go very specific and go for just one attribute you want to improve, which is, again, the additional focus. So if we go to, let's say, Memphis Depay and you wanted to increase his finishing, you would click that and that would get him working on his finishing. I would personally tend to keep these on none and go for something like positional roles. So Memphis Depay, attacking left midfielder, let's go for inside forward. Now to see what attributes that would increase, click on his profile, go down here to roles and duty, click on inside forward, and the ones which are highlighted are the attributes in which he will train on. So maybe his vision will increase, maybe some of his mentals will increase, his composure, maybe his decisions, especially because it is on 8, off the ball, and his pace and acceleration would increase. And as I said, I would tend to keep it on individual roles, as that will see the player develop a lot quicker in the whole set of different attributes. Whereas if you want to go for a single attribute which you yourself can see that would improve and make the player more valuable to you, then you should focus on that specific attribute. And just like in general training, there is a workload medium. It goes obviously all the way from light, average and heavy, or the lights, and I would personally keep it on average, as again, just like before, you just need to see what type of players you have, if they can deal with a higher workload or they can deal with a lesser workload, and that's that. Now, we've already spoke about individual roles, but in Football Manager, you're actually able to train a player in a different position. Now, we're going to use Memphis Depay for this again, because as he can play attacking left, he can also play in a host of other positions. Now before you go ahead and just click a random one and go, oh, you can play, let's put you on right mid and put you as a defensive winger. That wouldn't really work in most cases. You need to go through the individual roles and see which roles and which positions he can actually play in. So if you go into Memphis Depay, let's say you wanted to play him as an attacking midfielder in the centre. Now, we want to put him as Enganche because some of his stats here are pretty low for it and they wouldn't really increase. Whereas, if you go on to Shadow Striker, he has a lot of the stats already quite high in that position. So you don't want to train him as, you don't want to train him as a striker in, let's say, a trequartista when he doesn't really have as many of the stats as possible. The best one would be is to see if he has the specific attributes to play in that position. Shadow Striker, he's got a lot of 16s and in the high kind of 10s or low 10s, which can be increased. So you can train a player there, and this can be very useful as obviously it gives you more squad depth. So say if you were Man United and you had Juan Mata in attacking mid and Wayne Rooney was already out injured, and then Mata end up getting suspended or injured, and you've already trained Depay in the attacking midfield position, you can just move him in and it gives you a more versatile player and a lot more squad depth. Moving on to one of the more complicated is the preferred player move. Now this is one sometimes people overlook because there are a lot to choose from. These are kind of skills or habits which players pick up through tutoring, training, or just naturally. They range from things like, attempting overhead kicks or to avoid using your weaker foot, and there are plenty for kind of every style of player that you can get. If you think of a certain preferred player move which would suit one of your players, then it would be good for them to have that in their arsenal. And the way to go ahead and try and get a new player preferred move, again, going to use Memphis Depay just because we've been using him for the full episode. Go over here to the right, new player trait. You can go down, you can request one from any one of your coaches. Let's go for technical. Let's see if you want to go, as I said before, improve his finishing. So we go into his finishing. Here are some which he can do. So again, it ranges from restrict the number of long shots he takes to consider taking or attempting overhead kicks. So let's say if you wanted to go around the goalkeeper, the coach would then offer the advice that Depay already has enough about his game, and I can't really see that being able to add at this stage. Then you can either say, just keep doing it anyway, or I have a much greater experience of what benefits a player, or I trust your opinion and don't bother starting training. So again, you can add a lot of them in. So again, going on to someone like Rashford, new player trait, let's go for technical, and his movement training. Again, this one has a lot more. So again, cut inside from both wings when the opportunity arises, and the coach could go, you know what, we'll get them started right away. So whatever you want your team to play like or your player to play like, you can get their preferred move in. So as I said, if you wanted Marcus Rashford on the wing to cut inside from both wings, have a pop, then you can do that, and it will improve the player and also improve your performance in game if that's the way you want to play. So moving away from training out and going into things like the coaching staff and facilities, two things which have a large part in the player development. Now, to go on to see who your coaches are and how good they actually are, again, move to the left, click on training, move up to this bar again and click on coaches. Now looking here, Man United have a lot of coaches, and if your coaches aren't very good, then your players just simply won't benefit from them. And there are certain things which you should be looking for in a coach, things like high determination, motivation, and another thing on the side is sometimes the ability to speak the nation of your club or where your club is from, and also things like their experience in the game before, and they are good in certain areas such as I said up at the top, strength, aerobic, tactical, ball control, defending, and the rest of them. And as I said, bringing in a coach who speaks the language of where your club is from is good, but another thing you can also do is bring in a coach which speaks the languages of some of the players in your team. So again, bring in someone, again we're going to use Memphis Depay, bring in someone from the Netherlands who can speak his language, because that will help them, able to communicate with the coaches as well, and also get them settled in a bit more. And again, there's a little star system at the bottom here which will improve if you have better coaches. But at the moment you can see it's a bit mix and match, so you can go up here, click remove all, go through each of the staff, look at their attributes on the right hand side and assign them to which one they have the high attribute in. So Carlos Latin, let's go for fitness, put him on strength, either strength or aerobic, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes you have these little highlighted boxes which sometimes give you an indicator. Again, Gary Walker is 16, so moving to the other side. Now you have two 4.5 stars and 4 stars in fitness, and just go through each and every one and try and get them to at least 4-star minimum, I would say. And as well with coaching staff, the better the facilities you have, the more your players will improve. Now to go ahead and check what your facilities are like, you can do one of two things. You can go onto the homepage, click on Manchester United or your team, go up to facilities, and it will state here your corporate facilities, your training facilities and your youth facilities. So Manchester United have top corporate facilities, state-of-the-art training facilities and top youth facilities. So Manchester United have a pretty high standard of training facilities. Another way you can check is going back into training, onto team, and at the bottom here you can see training facilities is 5 stars. So it is important to constantly develop your facilities to get the most out of your best players. And also, on a little side note, if you do have better facilities, then it will allow you to attract better players to your club. So that's another thing to take into account too. So obviously, in conclusion, it's pretty self-explanatory. Better coaches and better facilities develops your players better. So moving on into the latter end of the video now, onto something which is sometimes, but not all the time, overlooked, and that is tutoring your players. Now, tutoring in Football Manager is when you have experienced players or senior players in your squad. You order them, or at least ask them, to take the younger, less experienced players, under their wing, on and off the training ground. They will help your young players settle in more, they'll be more comfortable with training, and help them develop their attributes. And a thing to take into account when you're choosing a tutor is that they should probably have better mental attributes and to be of a similar personality to the player you wish to be tutored. And to go ahead and get a tutor for your player is choose a player which doesn't really have a senior role at the moment. So Axel Tuanzebe, I don't know how you say his name properly, but go up to development, go down into tutoring, click on that, and you can see Alex Tuanzebe is fairly determined. Now, there aren't really many fairly determined players, but that doesn't really matter exactly. So you can ask, say, someone like Chris Smalling to tutor Tuanzebe. As a senior member of the squad, I would like you to tutor blah blah, as I can feel it can help improve his game. I don't see any reason why not. I'll invite him into the room. Again, just keep clicking around and say, okay, I'll work with Chris. Hopefully I can improve my game. Chris Smalling, okay, I can go now. And then Chris Smalling will now tutor Axel Tuanzebe. And if you find that a young player actually enjoyed their tutoring experience and took something from it, they might have even subtly picked up a player preferred move from the tutor, in this case Chris Smalling. As well as seeing the young player become more intelligent on the pitch, you can sometimes see their mentals increase, and obviously the tutoring will help you bring your squad together if it's used correctly, so squad cohesion will also increase. And last but not least, we'll move on to talk about game time and player happiness. And that is the one thing that every young player needs to develop, is obviously match experience and game time. And obviously sometimes you can think, oh, you know what, I'll just send them out on loan, see how they develop, and then bring them back. That's not always the answer, because more times than not, you could be, let's say if you loaned out Marcus Rashford, we could loan him out to someone who's in League One, and they might have poor training facilities, poor coaching staff, which then in turn may not help Rashford develop the way you want him to. So really, you need to think about, when you offer your players out for loan, have a look into the clubs which offer to take them off your hands, and have a look at their coaching staff, have a look at their training facilities also, to see if they're the best suitable club to take your player away from you. Another thing you can do is obviously keep the player in your squad and play him in your own games. Obviously in the less important games, so obviously maybe a cup game against a lower opponent. This is good because obviously it lets your player have important match experience, and it lets them, again, increase team cohesion by letting them understand how the other teammates play and ultimately get to know them a lot better on and off the pitch. And again, if you keep him at the club, you can then again have full control over his training and how you want him to develop. Because sometimes you might send a player out on loan and the manager of the team who took him out on loan may not play him, and then you've just sent him away and he's just lost a full year of good training. So all in all, the more games they play, the quicker they develop. However, you should be careful not to play them too much, because obviously they're used to playing youth football, and senior football is a lot more physical, so they could pick up 1 or 2 injuries in the process. And the last piece of advice is obviously the happiness of your players. This is one of the most important, as if your players aren't happy, they will just not put in, the effort or anything like that, and therefore won't, develop at the rate you want them to. So you need to constantly check on your youth players to see if they're happy in training. Like we said, if they're not happy, it's probably because of the high workload. Happy in general, obviously they can be unhappy at a number of things, obviously not enough first team football, or if a team comes in for them and you decline the offer, they can sometimes get unhappy about that. So if they aren't happy, find a solution as quick as you can, and if you can keep your youth players happy, they'll develop quickly and they'll obviously play better for your club and be the world-class player you want them to be. And so guys, that is the whole host of advice that I'm here to offer you guys for this video. Again, if you feel this has helped, if I've explained it well, then obviously leave a like. If I haven't explained it too well, then comment down below and, I'll take that feedback on board. But again, check my channel link out in the description. If you're looking for a Football Manager 2017 playthrough, then that's exactly what I'm doing with Borussia Dortmund. Do whatever you guys like to do. I'll see you on the next video, and remember, finders keepers, losers weepers.